Hi everyone, Amy here with some feedback on your comparing sources discussion from last week, week 7. I'm just going to follow up on some of the things that I started talking about in my midweek updates video last Friday. I think overall you guys did a really good job with this discussion, and that a lot of the things that were talked about in the discussion are going to be very, very useful to you overall, but particularly in the argumentative essay that we're working on right now, or that we're actually moving into drafting over the next week or so, because next week will actually be your rough draft discussion of the final essay. So we are very much approaching the end of our semester here. So as I said in my midweek discussion, you guys came up with a lot of insightful things in your original posts, and also some good topics of discussion in the comments you had already started to provide to one another at that point. Since I touched on several of those comments already in my midweek updates, I'm not going to talk about them too extensively here. But I did want to touch on just one or two things that came up in your conversations, and then I'll get into a discussion of what you kind of provided to wrap up in your reflections at the end of the week, because I thought you guys had some really good things to say there. So just starting out our 5 minutes of fame here is one comment that I thought was really interesting that came in after I had already posted the midweek update. This person said, I agreed with your line, I wouldn't have to dig and dig for information when talking about databases. On Google, the keywords aren't always super relevant to your search. For example, when I searched illegal immigrants, I got a bunch of news articles about random incidents involving someone who wasn't a citizen of the U.S. Not very informative on the actual issues involving immigration and the laws. On the databases, the keywords were much more relevant, and there was a short summary of what the article was about, making it quicker to decide if that source would be relevant or not. And so I think this is a very insightful comment, because there was a lot of back and forth throughout the discussion all week long about if you can really do what the databases do on Google. If you can use Google Scholar, if you can use some of the advanced search tools in Google and get exactly what you would get from a database otherwise. And I think that the answer is no. You might get close, but there's always going to be differences in terms of the quality of the sources that are returned. So, for example, you may be able to find scholarly articles through Google, but they might not be as relevant as you would find in a database, or it might not at least be as easy to find those super relevant articles that are really going to help you for whatever purposes you're trying to achieve with your research. And then I just agree with this person personally, because I think the way the databases are set up is much more conducive to the kind of research that you guys are going to be doing when you're trying to find sources, like for the assignment we're doing in this class. I'm just actually going to go ahead and pull up the database here, because I want to show you guys something. There's a particular tool that I love that I always want to show students, because it's kind of the quick cheating, almost cheating tool that will help you narrow your results in ways that you may not have originally thought of. So let's just say I was doing illegal immigration in a database search here. Once I have my results, there's all these ways that I can narrow my large amount of results over here on the left. So if I had accidentally forgotten to limit my results on that original advanced search pane that I was just in to full text, I can do that here. I can also limit it to scholarly journals here if I forgot to check that box on the previous screen. I can always narrow my publication date range here. Actually, I think it's easier to do it here because you do have that kind of sliding bar. Again, you can narrow your sources to academic journals only, because there are some other scholarly sources that aren't journals. They can be scholarly reviews, which may not be as useful to you. And then those are the kind of obvious ones, but then the ones that you may have skipped over previously are down here, and they're called the subject, the source term, and the subject tools. So when you click on those, it will drop down and provide for you keywords that come up commonly in your list of sources that the computer has recognized are relevant to people who are searching this topic. So, for example, if you are searching illegal immigration, you might be looking at it from the government policy point of view. You might be looking at it from the legal point of view here, law. You can even hit more. You might be looking at it in terms of deportation rates, Hispanics specifically, paths to citizenship, how does this affect workers in the economy, border security. There's all these other kind of subtopics that are suggested to you, and maybe you hadn't been able to think of the particular word that these source results are using, or maybe you were using some other synonym, and this will suggest it to you and say, no, this is kind of what's showing up a lot here. What exactly are you looking for? And so the thesaurus term is one way to do that, and then just the subject itself. These are derived from the Library of Congress subject headings that would have been previously used in like a card catalog system. So you might be looking at illegal immigration in Australia. It seems like there are 5 sources that have to do with that topic. In the European Union, there are 6. If you're looking specifically at the Mexican-American border, there are 8. If you want law, statistics of laws and legal status issues, 14. The moral and ethical aspects, 12. So you might be writing an article, or excuse me, an argument about illegal immigration from a legal point of view versus a moral point of view, and have a very different essay. So depending on how you're approaching your topic, you may want to choose to narrow it down based on one of these particular things. So if I just wanted to look at like the human element, the moral and ethical aspect of illegal immigration, I would check that here. And again, I could have been using some other synonym, but the computer's telling me no, words like moral and ethical are the ones that you want to use. And then I can just update, and I think I had about 400 results before. Now I have 12. So, you know, this is going to give me a really good list of all scholarly articles related to the moral human element of legal immigration. So that's just a demonstration for you to show you how many tools are just so easily embedded into the database, and how quick and simple it is to really narrow down your sources to the really good stuff that's not only credible and reliable and current, but also relevant to exactly what you are trying to look for and achieve with your research. Okay, so just one other thing that I wanted to point out regarding the comments and the conversations that were going on throughout the week. I jumped in and posted a comment on Matthew's thread. He had made a statement about .org sites regarding credible information, and then Hillary kind of followed up and asked him, why do you believe .org websites are credible? I'm not disagreeing, but I just want your perspective. And then he said .org websites are nonprofit, which could mean they don't have sponsors trying to push the information in a direction. Instead, the information is usually evenly covered on all sides. And so I just wanted to clarify something here. And it is true that .org websites are usually nonprofit, and so that eliminates what is a very primary bias for most publishers, which is the bias toward making money or making a profit. However, that doesn't mean that those sources do not have other biases. And so usually .org sites will be backed by some kind of advocacy organization, and they have a particular bias that, although not monetary, is a very strong agenda that they're trying to push. And so, in fact, the information is usually not evenly covered on all sides. And so you can go back to that credibility continuum I showed you earlier in the week to kind of look at which sources have at least some editorial review process. You know, stick to those 3 columns all the way to the right. But if you are getting into some of like the .orgs or the high quality mainstream media sources, you know, make sure that you're getting multiple sources on multiple sides, because they do not evenly cover the information on their own. You'll need to get a couple of different points of view to kind of round out the information that you're getting from those kinds of sources. So that's basically what I'm saying here in my comment, and then you know, there's some more conversation going on throughout that thread as well if you want to check it out. Okay, then as promised, I want to touch on some of the things that you guys came up with in your reflections at the end of the week, because they were very insightful, and I do think that a lot of the information we've covered this week was very useful to all of you. So this person says, this discussion taught me quite a bit and is definitely going to be very beneficial on this next paper as well as in my own life. I am glad that participation in this discussion was so high. So I brought this one out. This is just the very last little part of what was a overall strong paragraph paragraph of reflection, but I really wanted to highlight these couple of sentences here because I think a lot of you realize how useful research is going to be on this next essay because it is a requirement, but I'm hoping that this week's discussion also helped you guys realize how important knowing how to do different kinds of research can be for your own actual life, like this person says, and knowing when one type of research is appropriate and another type of research is appropriate, and so on. So just knowing, you know, where I am in my research process will dictate where I'm going to go get my information, and who my audience is, and what kind of writing I'm doing will also dictate the sources that I actually use in my writing. And then also this person had said, I'm glad the participation in this discussion was so high. You know, it's a summer class. We have lost a lot of people. I'm not going to hide that. It's pretty obvious, I think. But those of you that are around and still participating, just know you guys are doing an excellent, excellent job. So I do appreciate the in-depth, thoughtful participation that we got, even though it's not from as many people as we were getting involved maybe earlier in the semester. And then also just following up with this, please do keep it up over the next 2 weeks. We just have this week's discussion and next week's rough draft discussion to get through, and then we'll be done. So please do try to finish strong and keep your participation up because you guys are doing a great job. This other person said, in general, I prefer EBSCO to Google Scholar, but this opinion is based on how easy it is to refine the searches. So I just wanted to bring this in as kind of a conclusion to the examples I was giving you before as to why I think EBSCO is much easier, or actually any database is going to be much easier in terms of how adaptable it is and how, as this person says, easy it is to refine the search options as opposed to Google Scholar. So again, I'm not saying that you can't find some of the same sources or the same at least types of sources, but it may be more difficult to find your relevant sources, or it may take more time, or you may have to read through or weed through more of the stuff that's not as useful. So maybe I just wanted to pull this in to show you guys that I'm not the only one saying this. There are lots of people with research experience that do go to the databases first because that's what they're designed for, is this type of research. Not just wandering aimlessly on the web, which is more what Google is designed for. Okay, so, and then just another really strong reflection here at the end to wrap up. I've already been doing some research for a couple of classes this semester, and this discussion helped me think of new techniques to find information. I think it is very easy to get stuck in the same research processes, and it's good to use multiple strategies so you find varied types of articles to aid in your argument. I'm always more inclined to use scholarly peer-reviewed articles, but sometimes they don't have the current information on a subject. I feel like I now have the right tools to determine the credibility of any sources I want to use, especially if I found it through a web-based search. This was an awesome reflection, because it basically said everything I wanted you guys to learn from this activity. So first of all, you know, of course, like I said, you're going to be using the information we've covered this week for your argument essay because it's required that you have these sources. But also, this is a skill that you're going to need to be successful in pretty much every college class you're going to take, and then as we saw here, also for your own just personal lives. So I was really glad to see that coming up again and again. And I do agree that multiple strategies are the best way to find good sources for a true open-minded research process. I hope that none of you got the impression that I'm only in favor of databases. I do think that in their appropriate time, web searches can be very useful and can yield some good information, you know, like this person says. And as I've said, you know, you are going to find more current stuff on a web search. So I do think there's value in that. And so I was glad this person brought that up. Multiple strategies, you know, everything has its own time and place. And then, but I did want to kind of follow up here, you know, using different types of articles to aid in your argument. I would definitely say use different types of sources to aid in kind of the truth-seeking part of your argumentative process where you're trying to figure out your own position. But once you get to writing the actual argumentative product, you'll need to use your audience to determine what kinds of sources you're going to use. Because if you're writing to a very academic audience, you wouldn't want to have all different types of sources, you know, a blog, a documentary video, one scholarly source, one news article. You know, you would want to have all scholarly academic research because that's an academic audience and that's what they value, and the other types of sources might undermine your credibility. So I just wanted to clarify that there. And then this is great. I feel like I now have the right tools to determine the credibility of any source I want to use, especially if found through a web page search. That's good to see because I do want to give you the skills to figure out if a source is credible or not, no matter how you find it. The good thing about peer review is that it kind of does the legwork for you. You know it's a good source if it's been peer reviewed. But if you find a source and it hasn't been through that process, then you yourself have to do the hard work to determine its credibility. And that's what I was hoping you guys were able to figure out how to do this week, and I think you've all done a really good job. So keep it up. Thanks. Email me with questions.